I think, yeah, there's something to be said when you're young, and like that first paycheck, you're always blowing it on the fantasy object.
100%.
One birthday came, and me, I was like, I went to 1824, if it's still open, 1824, and just like burnt the whole thing in one night. Yeah, on
I know
bottles.
exactly how you were dancing. You
Yeah,
did this
you guys, I was there.
I think that's also to speak to the same peer pressure that we're feeling in our late teens.
Yeah.
It's that thing where in the WhatsApp group, who's going? If 90% are going, you don't want to be that one guy.
Yeah.
So I think there's not having it and still going, but then also, even if you have it, it doesn't mean you have to spend it.
We can't see you in every event, my G, and like your compensation hasn't grown proportionally.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mantalk.ke. Thanks for coming back for another week. As always, this episode is sponsored by Johnny Walker. The essence of this episode is talking about walking through life, but the caveat is aligning that with money. So how we've been in the past, how we intend to be in the future, and some fun stories about money and our lives in different phases, and ultimately the mistakes we've made. So welcome back. This episode is dedicated to somebody that we bumped into, your sister. We bumped into your sister, a young man called...
Owiti Muga is who we're shouting out today. Shout out to you, Owiti, because you've been going through, school and your friends and telling them to listen to Mantalk. It's a massive blessing. So we decided to come up with a topic that you can sit down and go to in the years of your life when it comes to how to make the right financial decisions or to make avoid the money mistakes that I think Eli and I have made. Until our early 30s.
Yes.
Painful mistakes.
Your sister told us that you are exiting your teens. And so we sat and we were like, okay, when we're that age, what do we wish we listened to make us not step or walk into the same mistakes? So I'm very excited for this episode. Very excited.
And we're going to go through what mistakes we made in our early teens, into our late teens, as we're entering our 20s, which is early 20s, and then what we did in our mid 20s, what we do it in our late 20s, and what we're doing in our early 30s.
Yes.
I think that manual will be really, really, the stories will be very exciting.
100%.
Because in the middle of there, we started a business.
And then we meet. So that'll be the third part of the episode will be about us making mistakes together
in business.
and learning together.
Yeah,
caveat, we are not experts.
No,
we're figuring it out.
Yeah.
We're just doing life the same way you guys are. But we'll do our best this episode. Yeah. So Oscar, because this young man is 17, 18, around that mark, the first mistake I made, I think financially, mistake one was at the exact same age that he is. So Owiti, little story for you. My first job, I was exiting 17, turning 18, and I worked in a bakery. So it was just in our small town, and my dad was like, you need to be paying for your own fare when you're going to school. So he said, make a CV, horrible CV. There was nothing on it. And so I got a job. So my first paycheck was like a weekly paycheck. So you get paid per shift, and I could only work Saturdays. So I got paid £30 for my shift. £30 is like, what, 5K? Something like that, right? So I remember I've always been big into fashion. So for me, the mistake I made is I thought this money is meant to be for transport, but I like clothes and accessories more. So I went on eBay and I spent my whole paycheck on buying one hat because it was trending and Chris Brown used to wear that hat. So that was my first money mistake, using my whole paycheck on one cap for £30. Caveat as well, it was fake. it was a fake cap, Oscar. It was Obey. Did you ever have that thing, Obey? My little space like this with a little rim cap. Yeah. And I felt like the man.
But at that stage of our lives, is it really a mistake? Because even I had a similar experience where, in my early teens, in Kenya, at least I wouldn't say in Kenya, but I didn't have the privilege of working a job when I was really, really young in my early teens. But I remember I used to save pocket money from high school. And now instead of saving that pocket money to do something constructive, I used to spend it to go to movies and dates with young girls and write some letters.
You were dating.
No, that girl, you write a letter, babe. Yeah. You put cologne on the letter, then you send it over. That was what the culture was back then.
Romance.
But my first, I'd say first job, first real job that made me money, I got when I was 20, in my first year of, it was an internship in my first year of uni. And I don't even know what I did with that money. I got one birthday came and me, I was like, I went to 1824, if it's still open, 1824, and just burnt the whole thing in one night. on
I know
bottles.
exactly how you were dancing. You
Yeah,
did this
you
yeah,
guys, I was there. And that time techno was trending.
Hello.
Like the techno, not the music, but
Yes.
the artist in Nigeria. So like, I think there's something to be said when you're young, and like that first paycheck, you're always blowing it on the fantasy object.
100%. Have you noticed that we're blowing it to either impress or fit in with other people, but not invest in ourselves? But I don't think at the age you're going to.
Nah.
You're not going to, but have you noticed that's the first instinct?
Yeah, it's so
like,
weird.
This money is I want to buy a hat. This money is I want to go and
as we
enjoy.
keep going, I think the thing that's going to happen is that you're going to see an evolution of how that problem starts when you're 18 and still progresses well into your 20s.
Yes.
That's seeking external validation using money. And that's
Yeah.
going to be the core theme.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That's very key because my mistake number 2 is very similar to this. So I get to like my early 20s and I get my first proper job. My first job with like decent money.
Yeah.
So there's a science museum in London. And so I used to live in Kent. So in the science museum, basically, this is when I learned sales. So I used to work at the photography section, where basically as you're walking through, there's like a big green screen. And I'm the person that's like, hey, do you want to come and get your picture taken as an astronaut? So I'd have to get... So I'd have to get like the parents to come into our booth and then do the whole process, put their stuff on, get them photographed, then try and transfer the experience into funds at the end by being like, do you want to buy them? They're really good. Because there's no obligation by the end. So that was fun. I learned the idea of like, that human element of body language. That was cool. But where I made my money mistakes is, so you're in early 20s, you're not making city money because you're also commuting. So that's a big chunk of your salary going anyway. But you're also being influenced by everyone you see on the train every day. So you're in the train every day. Again, I liked clothes. So I'm in zone 1, which is where like all the affluent people live. I'm in my early 20s. I don't have cash like that, but I want to dress like that man who is making like £200,000 a year. And I'm making nothing near that, right? So I used to save my salary. Number one, I have to pay for transport. That's a big chunk, maybe like 30%. Then the next chunk of it, I would say 50 was going towards clothes. Because I would see a shirt and I'd be like, I need to get that shirt. But I have to wait.
Yeah.
For the guy there, it's like disposable income. That's my next mistake. I think environment, something you've said about environment that you're in versus the money you're making and how that influences your financial decisions. That was my early 20s.
Yeah, it's so crazy that you bring that up. Now, like, because same mistakes happen, like say here in Nairobi. In my early 20s, I had this thing that happened that when I started making like proper, like my first, like I'd say real salary, which was between 70 to 100K, where I usually say that's like your first real salary in the after campus, you're making maybe 70 to 100K or maybe even 50K or 40K, like you're in that 40 to 100,000 band or even 20,000 to 100,000 band.
It ranges.
Or, that's that range.
Yeah.
Like the thing that usually happens in your early 20s is it's this super experimentation all the time. And like, the thing at that time that I was really, really like looking to do was get into relationships and impress girls, right? And now the crazy thing is I was in a club every weekend.
Goodness me.
Friday this week, Saturday that week, Thursday midweek. Like you're in that, and you're in there like for a whole 365. Like you're there for a whole 365 days of the year. Like you're constantly. Like you're constantly in clubs and you're pressing girls.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, you want me to buy you a booty?
Yeah.
You want me to buy you a drink? You're like so quick to like release the cash that you made after so much effort because you don't really understand that relationship there where it's like, like there's this really, really bad situation where young people are not necessarily like spending that money wisely because there's this belief, there's this scarcity mindset that this money is not enough for me to put it anywhere anyway.
Exactly.
You get what I mean?
It's just too small to invest.
It's too small to invest.
Exactly.
Right? And my biggest regret is that, because you can imagine what I would have done if I put that money into like financial assets. And that's my mistake number. You've said two. This is my mistake number 1, actually. That in my early 20s, I never, so it could be mistake number 3. I never got the opportunity to, or I had the opportunity, but I never actually invested in like productive financial assets. I didn't buy as many shares as I should have. I didn't buy bonds. I didn't know what a money market fund was. Like this realm of investments, I didn't play in that game because I felt like the money I'm making is kidogo. Like I was making like money that's not like in my mind. This money isn't much. Let me just drink and party. And so I spent it on girls and fun instead of spending it on like actually building my life.
But then now to the core of that, I think there's, the theoretical of what we should have done, but I think at that age, firstly, you're developing your brain, you're understanding the world. It's the first like hit of the enjoyment of going out in the evenings. And you're operating from a place of myself. There's no dependence. You have a roof over your head if you're lucky enough to have that. And I think as much as we can be like, yeah, you need to be invested in these certain things, how much of a place of enjoyment do you think there should be? Like, do you think guys should also have the opportunity to experience that, to
you
make
should
the mistakes?
definitely enjoy. Like,
I want us to be realistic.
I'm not stopping sherehe. Sherehe must go on. Like, you must have sherehe. But like the reality of it is that because we now have all this information, surely we should take advantage of it. Like, it's the reason why it's a regret is because like I had the information. Imagine at that time what Bitcoin was. Like, we had that information. Google was out. We knew what it was. Like, we knew what bonds were. We knew what shares were. We knew that Safaricom is a house built on a rock, like here in Kenya. We should have bought some shares there. Why didn't we buy? Like, like instead of doing that, we were buying KC coconut.
Oh, okay.
Every weekend, KC. We should have, like even us, I think we should have experimented a bit more in like building a financial asset portfolio. And I feel like when you're young, all you have is time to leverage. So if you invest a little bit, don't even like just forgo one booty for one weekend or two booties.
But your perception of time is that it's infinite. At that age. You're not thinking of.
I think it's scarcity. It's not just time. It's like that thing where you're saying like, my salary isn't enough. Like yes, and like what you're saying, where I have a lot of time, but like imagine if four friends sat down and like every month you guys are saying, "Wait, guys, like bonds are up. Bonds are giving 11% per year. See, this salary we're making per month, me, you, and me, Eli, and Kaz, we sit down. At that time, maybe we're 18. We say, like, guys, we put 2K each. 2K each. Yeah. Instead of that 2K each going into a bottle of us. Yes, you know what I mean? Yeah, that 2K each, 2K. Then now we buy shares. 2K, then we say that we own collectively this amount. Then per month we're making dividends. You see, like, you do that consistently for 2-3 years. By the time you're our age now, you guys are pushing Benzes.
Yeah. I think you're right, though. The knowledge is there, but I think the discipline is lacking.
Yeah.
Because I had a bit of that because when I was in my early 20s, when I was working this job. But for me, it was a case of I tried to use my money to start a business. But starting that business, I was still making mistakes. I think I've told this story before where I was now trying to like clothes has always been a parallel thing in my life. So I was like, okay, I have a little bit of disposable income now, maybe like 20%. I saved up a little bit to now start shipping things from China and then selling them and creating a brand because like, online had just started. But where I was making mistakes then about like now knowledge you're talking about is I think the intention was so great, start a business, but I didn't understand that when you're starting a business, what to be paying for first. So my next mistake when it came to that is, yes, I tried to do the sensible thing, but rather than paying for the product first, I paid for the packaging first. Then I didn't have enough money to buy the product for the packaging. So the packaging of the items stayed in my garage while I had to save up money for now the actual product. And that now took a lot of time because I started the whole marketing thing. So I think sometimes even in your 20s, even if you have the best intentions, you're still going to mess up along the way. Like even if in the bonds you're talking about, you might put it in the wrong one. I'd say like have the good intentions, try it, but just expect that it's not gonna, you still have to make the mistakes even if you're doing the right thing. Yeah. So it's a decision. Are you gonna do enjoyment and make mistakes that way? Or are you gonna try do productive things and still make mistakes?
I'll contextualize that for kind of the context of Kenyans who started business. So like we finally hit that mid-20s phase. So me and my boys from South Sea, shout out to Ustad, we decided to get into beekeeping as a business.
Yeah.
Right? And so like we bought a lot of beehives. I think we bought like over 50 beehives after saving for months, right? And then we decided like we're going to put them on someone's land.
Yeah.
And then when we did that, the honey was apparently stolen. I'll put it in quotes because suddenly we were told by the security that, the honey badgers, they came and ate all of the honey. Wow. When he came and saw the beehives, we found that a lot of knives. And so we were asking, can honey badgers carry knives and harvest honey?
Yes, these are very advanced honey badgers.
These are very advanced honey badgers.
Yes.
But the mistake we made at that point was, yes, we put our trust in the wrong kind of personnel, but the mistake we made is we didn't continue. So we didn't say, let's give it another run, let's save again and go again. Like the mistake we made was like, this honey business now, God, the honey industry has grown. We were right. Like guys are now doing it now and would have been doing it then. Would be rich now. And it's the big mistake is like when you're young and like these failures feel so devastating, financial failures, that you don't want to give it another run. And I feel like I wish we did that.
Yeah.
Like I wish we kind of kept going. I might still do that beekeeping business. You watch that space. I'm a big believer of the model.
Give me a call. We do something together. Yes. And the reason I say that is because I think one of the other mistakes I made with that same business I'm saying is I went into business, that first business where I made mistakes and we've done this correctly. I went into it with a friend who, just a caveat, if you're starting a business with a friend, make sure you both have the same amount of risk going in. Because when it came to this, it was a clothing and hat business. We both were like, okay, we need to put money in. And there was always excuses from my partner, like, oh, I can't put this in, or I can't do this. And then on my end, I was like, okay, no, this, I can see the longevity of it. So what I found is that the commitment. So when you're starting a business with somebody, I remember our first conversation, like, what do we both bring into the table?
Yeah.
And we both had something to lose. I think that's really, really key when you're starting something, especially with a friend, because you can kind of compromise a friendship and be like, no, it's fine. We can do this together. And you get a bit soft. Yeah. And that's happened the first time. And so I remember there was one point in the business where we had some stock coming in. I had traveled. By the time I came back, there was a whole list of things that was supposed to happen on his end, right? I came back and nothing had been done. And so now I'd gone, worked, brought money back. And then because he's not done his part, essentially the business died. So even when I buy my product, he's not ordered it. Do you see what I mean? So I think going into business with friends, go in with the same amount of risk, both of you. Yeah. That's one caveat I'd say. And I think when we started, the conversation we had about RevGen.
Yeah, we did share it was very proportionately.
I'm trying to remember the exact conversation we had.
No, the way we looked at it was like, we were like, okay, we're opening up this company, we're opening up this business. We both bring in these two different skills. Of one brings structuring, the other one brings actual marketing experience.
That was a convo.
Yeah, that was a convo. And then like we said,
split the shares that way.
Yeah, we split the shares that way. Yeah. And then like ever since,
we both had our departments, and here we are walking. Yes.
Yeah, it's been an insane journey. My next lesson for, I think, mid-20s, now we've moved into like mid-20s, is I want us to kind of look at the reality of like the lifestyle creep that happens, right? My camera is this one, right? So the lifestyle creep that happens is something that I think as Kenyans we need to be very aware of, that there's this thing where as you enter your mid-20s and your late 20s, people's lives change dramatically based on their background, based on the investment decisions they made when they were younger, based on the employment opportunities that they've received. And there's this need to keep up with the Joneses. And this need can even go well into your 50s and 60s, right? And what happens is there's a refusal to like actually live your financial reality, right? Like some Saturdays stay home. It's okay to stay home on Saturday. I don't know why there's this need to attend every single event, every birthday, every rural show you're there. Hey, it's okay to say, by the way, I've done two birthdays in 1 month, surely. Yeah. Like, give me some peace. Yeah. And there's also that thing where, like, because people are, there's a lot of availability of like mid-market stores where there's like a lot of new restaurants that are coming out every week. There's new nice places. There's new events that are being promoted. We can't see you in every event, my G. And like your compensation hasn't grown proportionally.
Yeah. I think that's also to speak to the same peer pressure that we're feeling in our late teens.
Yeah.
It's that thing where in the WhatsApp group, who's going? If 90% are going, you don't want to be that one guy.
Yeah.
So I think there's not having it and still going, but then also, even if you have it, it doesn't mean you have to spend it.
Yeah.
That's one lesson that I really struggled with, especially when I got to my mid-20s. Because it's that thing where life is happening, social currency is growing, and you're seeing that all your friends are enjoying something. You want to be part of that group, part of that story. You don't want to have that FOMO. So what's the solution in that situation? The WhatsApp groups, everyone's saying, we're going.
I have a solution.
What's your solution?
Keep walking, but walk at your pace.
Facts.
Yeah, like
facts.
Yes, keep like trying, walk at your pace. Like put one foot in front of the other, but know that like if you can't do something, don't be afraid to tell your friends. Like, by the way, guys, when it comes to that, I'm not straight. Like I have stuff I'm working on. I have a project, or I want to spend some time with myself, or I just don't want to spend that money at this point. Like I just want to like be chill about it. And if your friends are not chill about it, then they're not supposed to be your friends.
Yeah. Because they're just not in the same mindset yet. Because I think sometimes they can't fathom the idea that you're having that logic. Because I think sometimes it's not coming from a place of like, I want bad for you. It's like, I can't even do that for myself, so I don't understand why you're doing it.
Let me tell you, Eli. Just me, like, let's speak practically. Like, you're an entrepreneur and content creator. You've been very fortunate. Does it mean that because you have moved into a fantastic apartment that even me on this other side, I start telling myself, I'm going to move into a similar address? that has its own has its own pressures. And if you don't, and if your friends don't hold space for you in that way, then I don't think they should be in your life. It's really risky because at the end of the day, like every dollar you spend in that manner does not come back. In Swahili, we say pesa irudi. Like that money does not come back. You go and decide to live a lifestyle that's not yours. Start spending money in hotels that you shouldn't be spending in. Living a life that's largely irresponsible. That money does not come back. It goes where it goes, and you don't have it anymore.
Yeah. So there's something to be said about the group and the mindset that everyone's keeping in that group. Because like you're saying, if that text message goes out saying, I can't make it because XYZ, and they don't understand, then maybe finding a different group that does understand, or just finding a way to navigate that by not just making excuses. Because I think a lot of the time, I personally don't think guys are coming from a bad place when they're like, no, you should come. And you say, no, I can't afford it. Like, no, we'll pay for you. Do you know?
I know we'll pay for you. Yeah. I know there's those circumstances. But there's also the thing about, you should also like give leeway for your friend to like cut his suit according to his cloth, right? Let's cut his cloak according to his cloth. Let this person also show up in the scene with you guys when they can. It's not that they should show up every time. Let them show up. They want to be a part of your life. They want to also enjoy those little experiences. But like, I really have a problem with people who ostracize each other based off of income.
100%. Yeah.
I have a big problem with that. Like, don't make your friend feel strange about like being in your life because he's not making as much. But there's also something to be said about people who are there for freebies. There is also something to be said.
Yeah, 100%.
Where you've gone and now you're showing up in these experiences and like so much, you're spending so much of your money that now like you're not able to contribute actively. There's something to be said about telling your friend, but hey bro, like you don't have to come every time. It's not like a bad thing. You can sometimes you can pass.
Yeah, but that's a mature friend.
That's
that
a
gets
mature
it, because
friend.
because like 60% of your group might be doing the same thing you're trying to avoid. They might also be living outside their means.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So sometimes a group you can't explain something to something that doesn't understand.
It's a complicated one for sure.
Yeah. So finding a new group. Okay, so I did have this dilemma because now I'm at like 23, around 23 around there. I'm about to finish uni and I've got like the bug for business, right? So my next job was working with my friend, Dan. And so I was doing uni and then I'd come back and I'd work in the evenings. And so when you're employed by your friend, who's a business owner, to the point, his income is proportionately like 4 or 5 times what he's paying me, naturally, because I'm a student still. But the thing was, I was at the place where I was admiring what he was doing when it came to business. So I didn't want to get left out as well because it's my best friend. So I found that all of our experiences, it was a case of, let's travel to this country. Let's go do this. Let's go to London this weekend. And I started like running up a bill now with my friend because I was like, oh yeah, I'll just pay it off with my shifts. So I think also there's that pressure as a guy sometimes where you don't want to say that you can't. Because that irrational thinking of like, no, I'll figure it out later. And we used to make a joke when we were at this age, and if they're watching, they'll laugh. We used to say, oh, that's tomorrow's problem. Or that's next week's problem. That's future Dan's problem. That's future Eli's problem. So I think like knowing your means within your friendship group is something that I definitely struggled with at that age. So that's why I don't want to be too harsh on guys, because there's that irrational excitement. If your friend says we're going here, sometimes you don't have that strength to be like, no, I can't afford it.
But you
now.
see, you're also moving in the assumption because your friends were good people. But you see, there are circumstances where you're running up a bill with people who'll start looking down on you. You get
for sure. Yeah. You have to be very careful who you're doing it with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like I've seen situations where people have run up a bill with people who they thought they can trust and won't like try and ostracize them, try and make them feel small. But then there's this legitimate argument saying, yo, but we go to the club every weekend and we're buying bottles and you'll say you'll contribute and you say, bro, see, I'll M-Pesa you. I'll M-Pesa you. And then you don't M-Pesa for like a full, you see now you're already like, seething. But like,
because I've ended up being the other guy that everyone's like, I'll put it on you, Eli, and we'll send it.
Yeah,
and then you never receive
there's
other conversations that happen.
There's other things.
So did you see the game?
You see what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it builds this kind of resentment because even people who genuinely care for you, money is money. Money is money. So like, you're sitting somewhere and your boy owes you 25, 30K. It's not funny anymore when he shows up to the party and like he's saying, bro, pouring the tequila shot. And man, he's not going to pay me back. But then you see, like, that's why I always like, my philosophy when it comes to these things is, if I give my homie money and I know his circumstances, I never ask for it back. Because I'm like, and I always tell him, like, don't come and borrow me money. Because like, I'm not going to lose our friendship based off of disrespect. Like, because like I take it as disrespect because I work hard for this money. So like, don't borrow money from me if you're not planning to give it back. Just come and ask for it, and if I have it, I'll give you what I can, and I know it'll never come back, and we'll still maintain this fantastic relationship. Because the truth about it is, in the harsh economic climate that we're in, like youth unemployment is up at 65%. There's a massive amount of young men who also want to enjoy the fun times and want to enjoy their youth, but like they don't have the means. If you're blessed enough, samehea, like you say samehea, I mean just forgive it, like just like allow it, like the way you'd say in the UK, allow it. Just give the guy some space, like give him some, like let him enjoy himself. Don't when you're counting the bill for the booty, don't count that friend who's going through that financial trouble.
Facts, I always have a principle where if you're outside of my family, I only lend what I'm okay with losing. That's been my thing consistently. But like with the family, that's
because me, I've seen bitterness. Hey, and then you're asking somebody, you went to give him money thinking it would come back, and he's unemployed. You're the crazy one.
It means you're giving something that you can't.
And then you're putting that weight on him. You're the crazy. You're also part of the problem. But it's I agree. It's a fair.
I wouldn't encourage lending to friends in general, by the way. Just as a principle. Like, I just wouldn't. Like, as a principle, I just wouldn't. It's too complicated.
Like the way I handle it, like I've told you, it's just like, if you give what you can and you're like, it's literally charity. Like I'm helping someone out. They're going through a tough spot. I've been in a tough spot and I've been helped out. So let me do what I can. But like that whole thing of, ati, I'll M-Pesa you, bro. As you're taking a shot. Where? Don't M-Pesa me. I'd be mad.
I have. If I went down the list, my first 2 years in Kenya, my gosh. Do you know, actually, no, I'm not saying no, I'll say it. At one point, right, this was like the first 2 months of being here. So back home, you can give your boy your card to tap and like go get the bill. I remember I had met an individual. I gave the individual my card to go and tap.
Imagine.
I looked at the bill. It was several figures, Oscar. And I was...
7 figures of what?
Several figures. Several figures. Several figures.
Hey, don't say that on this podcast.
No. It wasn't 7 figures. It was 7 figures. And do you know what the crazy thing is? In my mind, you know when you're in so much disbelief? I saw the bill afterwards. Because I just moved here, I did the conversion wrong. And I was like, oh, that's only like 10K. It wasn't 10K.
It was not.
It was not 10K. I found out in the morning.
Jesus.
Yes. So that's why I was like, after that, I kind of stood away from the same principles I had back home. I don't really have them here anymore. But
even back home, even in the UK, there's still greasy people over there, brother.
I'd say the integrity and discipline within your groups, I've found is a bit different. That's what I've personally found.
My next one is about rent in the city of Nairobi. So now I'm moving up into 27 to 30. Now closer, late 20s. One thing I've noticed that's really has been a phenomenon for me, because I had that experience when I was moving house, and now that I'm also planning to move house, it's still the same advice I'm getting. Is this situation where Kenyans seem comfortable to pay nearly 50% of their salaries in rent for the belief of the term convenience, where you're saying, I'd rather pay 50% of my salary so that I can be able to live in this address because it's convenient. I contend that I do not think that is the true case. First of all, you have to understand that the real estate market in Kenya has been largely gentrified by a lot of expatriate income that's coming to the country and foreign direct investments that are coming to the country. So what that means is that those very luxurious places and good places to live, right, are sometimes dollar-denominated rent values that have just been converted into Kenya shillings so that you can see with your eyes. But the reality is that you're really paying.
It doesn't reflect the economy.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It's not a true reflection of the job creation and the purchasing power within that economy, because those specific segments have been gentrified by foreign dollars coming into the country and into the city of Nairobi, right? But a lot of Nairobians, I don't think, really understand that, like, my guy, we are earning that money we are earning in Ruto's economy. And if we start competing with expats to live in the same places they're living, then we'll see our salaries get slashed 50%. And then on top of that, remember, and that's 50% of like your gross. It's not even 50% of your net. And then on top of that, you're in a highly, 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 highly volatile tax environment where your pay slip is continuously going down. Right? So like, my view of it is, part of that lifestyle creep and part of that wanting to be part of the crowd and to impress your friends is living in a certain address. I think it's a big financial mistake that I'm trying my best to avoid. Maybe, God willing, if I can close one eye and move to those places, maybe I will. But like, I honestly think it's one of the biggest problems that are plaguing like middle class Nairobi, where we are constantly seeing that places where we should be renting or mortgaging have dramatically increased in price, while our salaries and our income has not. And so it's like this massive problem. And so a lot of guys, you're on rents that you shouldn't be on.
I feel like there's something to be said about people wanting to do it to impress others, but I do think some people are just in an unfortunate situation where it does just take up a bigger chunk of their paycheck, even if they didn't want it to. Because I think a lot of the time, like, it's just the salary isn't matching what they want to at that point in their life. And yes, the convenience might be for them rather than for others. So what I would say as an entrepreneur, right? So I can look at my year as an entrepreneur and I can be like, okay, this is a good quarter, this is a good quarter, this is a bad quarter, this is a good quarter, right? That was 5. But I feel like sometimes someone might step into a contract, someone might step into a lease agreement, and then life just lifes. So they find themselves struggling, not because they were doing this apartment for their friend and to be that guy, but they're doing the apartment because at that point they'd forecasted life is going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? Because I think like sometimes, theoretically it makes sense. It should be maybe 1/3 of your salary, nothing more. But we are also just living in Nairobi. And I think even talking to friends back home, they would love it to be 1/3, but they say, let me take this risk now and try to make my income increase as I stay in this spot. I've seen that be the case for a lot of people that I know.
But is it like, but Eli, for me now, that's where the debate is, right? Do you take the elevated risk, an actual reduction of income, saying that you're going to grow it, especially in this economy where like growth has slowed. Like if you look at all the macroeconomic factors surrounding it, job creation has slowed. Employment opportunity, yes, job and employment are the same thing. Business development has slowed, growth of businesses has slowed. So there's all these negative macroeconomic factors, right? Is it sensible for people to say like, you know what? I'd much rather not live in those gentrified addresses, right? Or in those places where like, yes, they're cool to live in. I'd much rather take maybe a slight hit in the quality of life that I'm, or the lifestyle that I envision for myself for a limited amount of time. And then make actual financial investments that grow you into that person, whether it's in a skill or whether it's in financial assets. Don't you think?
I think on a theoretical level, that's what should happen.
Yeah.
I think but I think some people, that might be that's what they want, but they just find themselves like, I'm just not making the money I want to make at this point in life.
So you'd much rather just enter the big house and wait for life to life?
No, I'm not saying that that's the choice they want to make. I'm saying maybe for them, it's like, at this point in my life, I have to use 50% of my salary. At this point in my life, I have to use 60, 70. That happens to some people. And it's not by design. It's just like they find themselves in a market where they can't find a job where the salary is what they want at the moment.
Then why live there?
So the convenience thing, I think a lot of the time you can say it's convenience for like friends and stuff, but maybe they equate the effort of spending 2 hours getting to their apartment versus spending a little bit more money and having that convenience is down to that toll that morning and that evening takes. And that toll that your life takes in like not having any time to decompress and get back home. That's why I think some people make those decisions to be, let me spend a bit more money and not have to spend 2 hours and not have to get home like 9 p.m.
Yeah, but like anyway, for me, I'll just put it in as a mistake from my side, from my observation, which is like, you don't want to spend a disproportionate amount of your income.
It's not advisable,
on rent alone, because it doesn't grow. Like rent is essentially like, it's essentially a recurring cost, right? That generates, like, maybe there's a lifestyle value to it, but it generates absolutely no economic return in the long term, right? If you moved into, let's say, 30% of rent, put 20% into an MMF, put 20% into a shareholding, or even put 20% into building a skill or a business, you will eventually be able to afford that apartment without paying, right? Because like you're saying, I'm saving the money for now so that I'm investing it now so that I can be able to afford it later. And that's, I think
it's correct. Yeah. It's sensible.
Yeah, but I do understand the whole situation where maybe you've put yourself into a lease agreement and circumstances have changed, but you see that's based off of your historical earnings, not your future forecasted earnings, because historically you must have been making enough money to actually enter that lease agreement. But there's this thing where it's like, like I'm talking about the salaried worker or the entrepreneur who's generating revenue from their business in a predictable fashion, but they want to see that lifestyle. They want to experience that lifestyle prematurely when they're not financially in that position to do so. And that is largely because of like the social pressures that have been exerted on them.
Yeah, and it reflects in other aspects of the life, like you said, the going out, etc. I'd say one of the solutions, especially if you don't have dependents, is going into a house together with somebody else and slashing that. I would say, like, if you want to
Share
if you
house.
share a house. If you don't want to be spending that commute, if you want to have that security, and if you do value like area, then somebody that you can live with for like a year
Share
and a bit,
house.
share. I think that would be the most practical thing
Share
for
house,
people to do, especially
yeah.
when you're younger.
Share house. Like actually I believe that thing for like share house, because it also allows you to, like, sharing house allows you to like slash rent costs and also gives you the access that you're looking into. That might be a bit of a convenience issue where you won't have the whole space yourself, but you need to learn to share that. And it's also a big life skill. Like living with someone allows you to build a life skill of being with people and understanding what people's needs are and other human beings. So sharing a flat is great.
I'd say
But
that,
but that
But when you're making the decision, I see what you're saying. Like I agree with that
Where?
when making the decision.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at mid to late 20s, right?
Yes.
This is just before I come to this beautiful, beautiful city.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really concise one. The biggest lesson I learned in my late 20s was now I was kind of in the entrepreneur world. So what I learned at that space is that even if you have it, you don't have to spend it. We said it earlier, but this is when I started to implement it. And I think this is why mentors are so important, because this was a part of my life when I've spoken about this phase a few times, where we started a business in Central Europe and I managed to shadow my dad, who's my mentor, for a year and a bit. And then I saw the idea of managing budgets when it comes to business, managing other people's money, and knowing where to cut, like we're saying on rent and stuff. But now this is in a practical level where even if it comes to reducing lifestyle costs. So for us, one of the big things I realized is when it comes to renting a vehicle, that you want to use something. So I don't know if it's the same here in Kenya, but you'd rather rent a vehicle that's below the budget, build at the points, and then spend the points to get the better vehicle later. So kind of that delayed gratification is something I learned there. And then just managing like a sheet, looking at the year for business, we're trying to invest in this, how much like capital. That was essentially what I learned in my late to mid 20s. And seeing somebody, like watching his discipline kind of influenced me to be like, you need to have this kind of discipline in business. And that really helped me now coming into Kenya later on. So that was my mid to late 20s, was realizing how to run a company.
That's fair.
Yeah,
What were the
yeah.
mistakes that you saw being made?
Mistakes being made at that point. The mistakes were on my side. Because I didn't understand. And it's like, no, we don't spend on this. Like if I'm picking the car, I'd be like, no, let's do this. And he sits me down and says, no, mentorship moment, teachable moment. We use the points later on. We don't use somebody else's money to do this.
Hence the delayed gratification.
Hence delayed gratification. That's where I learned that in Czech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. My I think other mistake I'd say that relates to that, which is the delayed gratification mistake, is one of the things that I learned not to do in my mid to late 20s is, you know, you've always wanted to like that. We've already spoken about the address. It's that thing where we say, I want to experience, spend the money because it's for experiences. Hey, my guy, you've gone to a villa, you've put out 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, I know, for 1 month.
For vibes.
And then you're saying that it's for experiences. My guy, the bills are also an experience. They're waiting for you.
Yep, they don't go away.
Yeah, the bills don't go away. So like, I think that's something that I learned to be very cautious about, which is like, sometimes you have to delay that gratification for saying, that trip that I want to take with the boys, that trip I want to go with my girl, like, let me get to it. Like, walk at your pace. Keep walking, but walk at your pace. Then when you get to that, then you'll be able to have that magical experience. I feel like it's very important to delay that gratification until you actually understand how to draw a budget, because that's something I learned later. Budgeting your money. Like money has come. How much money is going into investments? What's the amount? What's the proportion? Money has come. How much money is going into rent and other incomes? How much money is going into enjoyment? And how much money is going into your lifestyle, your clothing, and your central needs? Like just making that like budget and sticking to it, that financial discipline is something that I think I didn't have for a long time in my life. And I got that in my late 20s. So delay your gratification so that you can stop paying for experiences. And start actually living within a budget.
Yeah.
My other one is, I think one of the things I'd learned to do, I feel like I did slightly later, is increasing my income by building a skill through my education. I think there's a lot of flack going around in the world where like people don't have access to, higher education, not as much. But I've seen firsthand the power of actually like investing in adding a new skill to the existing set of skills and the predictable set of skills that you've had. It's been a massive lift to your capacity to earn and save and live a higher quality of life. I think if you're entering your mid to late 20s, it's definitely something to do earlier on. Because if I did things slightly earlier, maybe right now I'd have reaped the benefits a lot faster and a lot quicker. But there's also something to be said about gaining experience within a job and understanding the roles that you want to get into and to grow within them. But yeah, I think the mistake there is there's a delay that we usually make as Kenyans where we say, who needs a master's anyway? Who needs to go and study more? Me, I went to school. I'm tired of school. That was the attitude I had for a period of time. And it's really, really crippled my ability to increase my earnings. And I think that the sooner you get the higher education, the better. You kind of want to get that thing out of the way so that you can enter your earning years as soon as possible.
Facts. I think so. That's on the professional side, right? Adding extra skills. I think I'll speak to the business and creative side. So I think there's a lot of guys that watch that are in that space. One of the things I've realized is when we're operating in the creative space, a lot of the time it's invoice to invoice rather than check to check. And invoices typically are 30 days, 60 days, and that could really mess up cash flow as a business owner, as a content creator. So a few things that I've realized you can leverage to make sure you don't find yourself in a hole is, number one, insisting on deposits when you're operating with other businesses, when you're operating with any sort of client. Insisting on a deposit prior, because if you're chasing 50% of your check, it's better than chasing 100, just on a very basic level, right? Because I found that I would be like, oh no, it's a really good client. Let me just accept payment in 60 days. But I think what you'll find is like a big proportion of them, if they do see your value, you're going to be able to get that deposit. But then it also mitigates for the ones that there's a bit more leverage on their side where they would drop you if you don't accept these terms. So try to have at least half the people that you're working with giving you those deposits. And then talking about extra skills, I think sometimes as creatives and business owners, we don't know how much we have in our roster. Like we don't know how much skills we can leverage, whether that's knowledge and consulting, whether that's building another business on the side that's based on your creativity and your skills. I think it's very, very key for creatives and entrepreneurs not to rely on one stream, because it's invoice to invoice, it's not salary. So take deposits and try to leverage other ways to use your creativity to get income. That's one thing that's really, really helped me, because I know there was a year where I was in that, invoice to invoice, and it can get very, very stressful. That's the advice I'd give.
Yeah. It's fair. Yeah, I mean, amazing. One of the things I think, just to add on to that is, and I was discussing this with someone this morning, is that in the creative industry, one of the things that I've realized is like, if you look at a balance sheet for like a media business, working capital constraints are the things that usually kill really kill that business. Because one, so when you're talking about working capital, you're looking at three things: your inventory, your receivables, and your payables, right? So inventory for media businesses is the social media product. Like how many brands are buying that social media product, right? So how quickly is your inventory moving? And how many receivables are you generating? Receivables are credit sales, like, because brands typically pay after 60, 90 days, right? So like of those receivables, because if your inventory is moving, your receivables are growing, right? Which means that you're creating a lot of cash that's going to be coming in like 60, 90 days because your inventory at the top is moving. Then your payable down here is how much money is paying out to be able to generate the machine. Now, the problem with the creative business that Eli and I faced when I was looking at our balance sheet for Mantalk was, we're creating a lot of inventory, which means we're creating a lot of payables, but receivables are not moving. No one's buying.
You're investing for years.
Yeah, you're investing for years because like your payables keep growing. You're paying producers, you're paying content creators, people who are collaborating with you to be able to actually elevate the brand. Your inventory is growing in terms of how much stock you're putting up. Every week there's an episode going out. But your receivables aren't growing. Why? Because brands do not necessarily recognize or understand the concepts that you're selling. So like one of the things that I really have to commend you for is that in your creative kind of business, your receivables are always going. Like there's always a brand that's working with you, taking up inventory, taking up space on your social media strategy. And then like your payables have always stagnated. So now you're seeing like this lovely curve of growth using like a very savvy working capital strategy. So like that's something that I think entrepreneurs would learn from just an observation, a technical, slightly technical observation of the problem that creative businesses seem to have and how you've kind of solved for. Final mistake from my side. Actually, no, it's not my final mistake. There's one that we have that
a joint mistake.
There's a joint mistake.
Yes. Oh, goodness.
Recently, that was crazy. But another mistake that I think is something that a lot of young men would benefit, because as we enter our late 20s, we're now entering relationships, and we're now entering like a phase where you're with a partner that you're trying to kind of woo into a marriage.
Court.
Please God, I get caught.
As my father says, court.
There it is. Or you're trying to build a life with.
Yes.
Now, I found that things are much more efficient when you communicate the fact that this is our financial reality. Like, this is, don't overstretch us on the fun and experiential stuff. Let's try to run this relationship on a budget that's sustainable for me. And I will not hate you for it. Nor will I be like, because I'll feel like I'm working this hard and a lot of my money is going into the relationship and into funneling it. I'd like us to do things that are sustainable. And like things that, you know, like we can work on together that creates the platform from which a family can come into. And like I feel like a lot of men, we really suffer at that because we don't want to be seen as, you know, brokey. You know, you don't want to be seen as that guy who's like, you know, your stingy boyfriend. You know, stingy men in Kenya, we get a bad rep. But you have to be reasonable about these things. Otherwise, you'll be in a situation where like your girl needs certain things. And like you're not able to deliver them because you've overstretched yourself on overspending in nice hotels or so like I think it's very, very important for us as young men to learn how to communicate our financial reality and to take the feedback we receive regardless of what it sounds. If she sounds disappointed, you tell her, okay, baby, I'm sorry. Baby, I'm sorry. Like this time we're going through a tough time. Business has been slow. Mantalk has no sponsor. So we must take some time now, slowly, you know? Or like, things are good now. We can take that trip. We can do the things that you want us to do. I think it's really, really important for us as men to do that because it's also a responsibility. We're the heads of the house we will be the heads of the house when we marry, and we need to kind of understand the financial piece of what that would look like in relationships and marriage and love and stuff.
Yeah. I don't really talk about relationships on here, but what I would say is I would just say when you're entering, just don't set the bar higher than you can maintain. I think, but I think a lot of the time I do feel sorry for guys because that mentality, you know, in nature, when the birds are trying to court the other bird, they show everything. They show like the peacocks, you know. I think that is in our nature as men to sacrifice and give and show like, you know, I would do anything for you. But I think it's the entry point where people make a mistake because you can't sustain it over a longer period of time. That's the only advice I'd give because you can still woo, you can still court just in a smarter way. I advocate picnics. Always. Advocate picnics. We talked about this many times. I advocate for picnics.
I see what you've done there.
Advocate for picnics. They're just, you know, they're just there. They make more sense.
Keep the budget nice. Be savvy about it because like the truth is at the end of the day, like if you don't communicate where you are financially with your partner, with someone you're with, they also will create unrealistic expectations sometimes.
But I think there's different ways to communicate. So the thing is, those conversations can't happen until slightly down the line. But if you start, because if you start here, you're communicating with what you're showing, right? It's not.
I get what you're saying.
So like, communicate early with what you're displaying, and then later on, you don't have to backtrack and be like, by the way, I know you showed you this, but that's not actually what I'm about. Because those conversations come slightly later on.
You want to play the melody a bit flat.
Play it here. And you'd rather impress later on rather than to disappoint later on. 100%. Entry point should be maintained.
Just like please.
But we're figuring it out because
go to Karura. Tell me, walk, keep walk in Karura. But not every fun restaurant you're walking in. Please.
And it's okay if you make mistakes. I've made those mistakes. It's okay if you make mistakes. You get excited. You get excited.
But like,
we love love.
Yeah, I think.
So basically, we're saying emotional spending is not advised.
No, it's not.
That's basically what we're saying.
Be careful.
Okay. I think the final mistake, the one that we both made together, is starting a business and not having your own internal policies when it comes to money, budgeting, and spending. One of the mistakes we made, so podcasting on a very practical level incurs a lot of expenses.
High capex.
Very, very high capex. And sometimes you can get excited by a contract or by a potential client, and then you have to foot costs, hoping that they will refund those costs later on, and you'll actually make profit. So burn your fingers once with us is we got very excited about a client once. We did mitigate that by your expertise when it came to the contract. But where we made a mistake is going on good faith. I don't think that's advisable sometimes when it comes to... Yeah, we went on good faith. We started spending because we were like, oh, if it's in the contract, it's going to be honored. So we assume that everybody operates from a place of integrity. Yes. So we're like, oh yeah, there's no way this kind of company wouldn't pay. So we went, spent a lot of money. We won't say how much, a lot of money. And sometimes I think also as creators and being in the space, you'll take it for granted a little bit. I think sometimes they feel that when it comes to contracts and stuff, we're not going to understand it because we're in the creative space. So what I would advise is never putting up your cash, hoping that a client's going to, number one, actually honor a contract, hence why deposits are important, and mitigating for that as well, and spending money that you know you can lose even as a creator. Because for us, we spent so much and we found ourselves in a legal situation where we're 2 years down the line trying to recoup costs that were spent 2 years earlier. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I think we made was not having internal policy. So what we did is now working with any brand, anyone, no matter how exciting it is the cameras don't come on until the money is in the account. Because you can't burn yourself twice and make the same mistake. So we are sharing that so that you guys don't have to do that, even podcasters. Because I think podcasting is probably the most expensive content form at the moment for people that I know. Fair. So yeah, don't turn the mics on if it's a sponsor until the money is in the account. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Eli's laid it all out. I think the
contract side, maybe you can speak to that.
The reality of it is also, I think, you need to read the contract twice. Both the brand and the and the creator need to read the contract, and to look at it and say, contractually, this is what you're obligated to deliver. Yeah. These are the terms. I feel like there are certain brands that might have an international footprint, but don't necessarily respect the fact that creators actually draft and read these contracts and understand the obligations just as much as they do.
They assume there are consequences.
And then they assume there are no consequences when you're working with creators. There will be consequences when these things happen. You will be followed up on. Some of us have legal training. We will take you to court and recoup our monies. But the thing that I found really, really interesting about it was in Kenya, and when you're working in this context, it happens obviously a lot globally, I'm sure, but in Kenya particularly, there's a lack of respect for contractual agreements and contractual obligations that needs to be emphasized, especially in the creative industry, right? There needs to be a mutual respect in terms of how you two are working. And I'll actually say on this podcast, shout out to Johnny Walker for being just amazing.
The integrity is
high integrity people who we're working with, and this is why
respect.
And there's a lot of respect in terms of the creative control we have over the podcast, in terms of working with them. Shout out to the Johnny Walker brand team so far. We haven't had any massive debates, and it's been a really refreshing thing. Right? Look at how the conversations are flowing. We just keep saying you keep walking because we've loved the walk. So I think there's a lesson there that Eli and I learned where there has to be internal controls in budgeting. But the thing that saved us was a pretty good contract.
There's a certain sentence.
There's a certain sentence that it was not like this. That was immediately.
So investing rather than a bottle, pay a lawyer to go through your contract so you don't lose more bottles.
Was that a podcast with one shout out?
Yeah, come on. Hello. But I hope there's a couple of lessons there that people can take and not make the same mistakes. But I would say still enjoy yourself, but just be sensible.
Be sensible.
And ask questions, because there's people that have made the same mistakes you have.
And look into trends. The one thing I'd tell you, OET, since this podcast is for you, is look into trends that really affect your economy. One of the things that I think life skills that you have to have is there's a reason why your dad needs a newspaper every day, because he's trying to establish trends as to where his family is established and what's happening around him. Look into information that actually affects your daily life and delve deep into that before you make career decisions, financial decisions, life decisions, because you have to understand what are the trends that are driving what you're experiencing right now? Why is it that the youth are in such an uproar in this current economy? Why is the current economy slowing down? Why is it that like the creative economy is growing at the pace it's growing? What's exciting? What are those?
That's how you find the gaps, right?
Exactly. What are those tailwinds that are driving this much value?
Facts.
Yeah, like if you do that as a young man, I think you'll go very far because we didn't have those skills when we were younger. We have learned them now.
Yeah, and which if you're already listening to this kind of pod at your age, I'm pretty sure you're making good decisions anyway. That's
Shout out. I had you opening doors by now.
Hello.
We weren't doing that.
Quite the gentleman. Obviously, shout out to you.
Shout out to you.
And we hope you've enjoyed this episode
Half as much
as we've enjoyed making it.
We have enjoyed making
because
it.
we had a ball.
We did have a ball.
See you next week.
Keep
guys.
walking, guys.
Peace.
Peace.